The encampment of Green Goblin Clan was as I thought. The flag standards of the Green Goblins were all over the place. There were so many glittering objects that were coins and jewels embedded around the tents of various colors here and there. They just collect them, but it seems that they don't organize them in any decorative manner. There's no mistake that people who discover this Green Goblin Clan's encampment would think that they have hit a lottery. Of course, that would be true if you could win against this clan first. Anyhow, when the summoned were massacred due to the Green Goblin Clan in my days as a human, there were rumors that the Saint Sword and high-level summoned were dispatched. Now, seeing that the encampment located deep within the outskirts of the Western Forest, I thought that most likely what occurred was they weren't able to find it in the end. I do not know exactly, but I was able to feel the traces of magic from high-level shamans. Warrior without honor, Blood Dagger. We welcome you that have come to the land of the Green Goblins. There were countless goblins that had already lined up before we had arrived. Rather than welcoming us like the instance in the Land of Glory, I could feel that they were more curious of our strength. Finally, another clan has entered our Green Goblin Clan territory. A brother clan lives within our tribe. It really was the case that no clan had selected the Green Goblin Clan once in the last 8 years. It seemed to me that one of the things that were quite heartbreaking to the clan was not being chosen by the giant wolves. To be able to resolve two of their wishes, in a slightly different sense, we were their saviors. Thanks to that, a lot of their attention was focused on me. Grike. That awesome orc riding that wolf over there is our brother clan's chief. So handsome. I want to mate with him. Grike. Grike. Hearing these kinds of comments were beginning to be greatly disturbing. My face seemed to be quite handsome among the greenskins. Thanks to the exclamations of the other female goblins, Fairy Sprite Archer Meave moved closer towards me in a vain attempt to ward and caution off future rivals. An ugly girl is beside him. Once called the greatest beauty among the goblins, Meave. But now, she was one that was only loved by those with fetishes. Listening to those voices, I was somewhat saddened, but I thought that there was no need to express this as I advanced into the encampment together with the other chief. Like the greenskins in the Land of Glory, they have also heard the news beforehand. It seems as there were tents prepared for us. Of course, I thought I had no time for breaks in the next 2 or 3 years, so I immediately started walking towards the Green Goblin's tent. After receiving permission if I could enter the chief's tent, I was able to see an extremely large tent once I entered. So much so that my mouth opened in shock. There were countless piles of gold coins. The Green Goblin was even lying down comfortably on a pile of gold coins. It was certain why my jaw had dropped open, seeing all of the gold coins that he continuously had hoarded over time. I then regathered myself and spoke towards him perched comfortably amongst those gold coins. I began to relate all the things I thought of after seeing the first battle the Green Goblin Clan had displayed. Green Goblin. What is it, Blood Dagger? It has been a long journey, so you must be tired. It would be best if you were to rest well. It isn't much. It's just that I wanted to discuss with you of my plans going forward, hence why I have searched for you. Soon, after beginning to talk of my plan, the Green Goblin's expression began to change with great interest. Are you asking us to entrust our elite goblins to you? Giraik. That is so. It would be better if they are ones whom received the divine protection of the god of battlefield. Funny enough, but the method I chose was tutoring, and that of complete tutoring. For every 3 Blood Dagger clan members, 1 elite Green Goblin will be in charge. If it's a goblin with a unique ability, then the chances of the goblins awakening their unique abilities were higher, which was even more advantageous. The training period were 3 days every week. The first month had no rest days. The rest of the time was decided to be focused on increasing our specs by personal training or hunting. As long as you provide sparkling objects properly, there will be no problem. But, Green Goblin, it may take a while before you can attain what you want. Are you fine with that? It doesn't matter, Blood Dagger. There will be no case where you will fail to keep this promise, one who considers honor so importantly that can forsake his own name. I really don't care about honor that much, but for them to think of me like this was pleasing. Anyhow, I have heard about your clan members as well. Giraik. But, what will you do? I wish to entrust myself to you. Giraik. He definitely knew that I was going to say this. It seems that he just wanted to hear this directly. He was extremely elated. The reality that another chief would request of him to teach was a very joyful event. I thought that if it weren't for us, this was an event that will never occur again in the Green Goblin Clan. That is fine. Giraik. Is there anything else you're curious of? There is. The fact that you can make glittering objects shine. I am curious how you were able to attain such an ability. To be honest, what I was most interested in was how I could awaken a unique ability of that level compared to the cheap, trash-like HP increase ability. The value of race and special classes were definitely important. But, unique abilities were critical as well. Class, race, and ability, these 3 must be completely efficient and harmonious. Even in the case of increased vitality, it was definitely a unique ability that was not clearly effective for humans. However, if you consider the Minotaurs and their race characteristics, possessing this unique ability would be a nightmare in its own way. It was the same for the Green Goblin before me. A dexterous goblin, the ability to create flashbangs out of sparkling objects, I can't confirm for sure, but he was probably a class of either a thief or assassin. The balance between the two was perfect. The Green Goblin nodded to my questions and resumed. Well, it would be right to say that you will naturally awaken it. I think. Right. It was probably when my pile of sparkling objects began to increase abundantly. As expected. I had also searched for answers on knowing how to obtain a useful unique ability during my human days. Some awakened theirs from their desire, and others blossomed theirs from their repetitive actions. He definitely has a point. It seems that he had desired to make sparkling objects even more shining. Those repetitive actions of continuing to gather gold coins. The god of battlefield had certainly rewarded this guy what he wanted. During the time when I wanted to escape death, this HP increase was probably reflected from my desire to live. It does not respond to ambiguous or intentional repetitive actions. I began to wander around purposelessly here and there after leaving the Green Goblin's tent. I wanted to think of what I really desired. A big grey sword too large to be called a sword on my back. The blood-soaked dagger sheathed to my hip. And that cheap long sword also on my back as well to serve as a substitution. I have gotten stronger anyhow. It was just a moment, but it was enough to share a few blows against the Queen of the North, and due to the tutorial, my body became that much stronger. Currently, I can feel the strength and magical powers circulating in my body even more. Behind the campgrounds, I aimlessly swung my sword. Why-ing. That sound accompanied the heavy, dense grey sword cutting through the wind. This sword was much more lighter than when I had first held it. What I really want. It was definitely the desire to be strong. Slowly, the images of that fight emerged. Queen of the North. If it's now, can I possibly win? Suddenly, the combination of switching between a big sword, a long sword, and a dagger divide the air. The thrusts of the Queen of the North were truly like flashes of light. She already knew that I was aiming for her critical points, and what my future actions would be. It felt as if she had anticipated the whole situation as it unfolded. The 6 steps at that time. There's no meaning now. The great sword's reach was long enough to deflect the range of her spear, and so I closed the distance and pressured her with my dagger. But despite that, the Queen of the North wouldn't fall. Duck. Despite it being all an imagination in my mind, she still wouldn't fall. She was definitely growing as well. Anxiety came to me as I continued to swing the sword. As if I was in the state of shadow boxing. I let go of one of my hands as soon as I swung down my grey sword widely from above. That recent attack would definitely be blocked. But, I immediately drew out my other long sword from my back and struck her left waist. This was blocked at well. After that, dagger, and grey sword again, and long sword again, the strikes of a sword could be heard echoing throughout the forest. Stronger. I will definitely be stronger. I will fight to win, and will not meet death like my previous life. It wasn't just the Queen of the North that I wanted to fight. The fighting spirit directed at me by Gorf, and even Green Goblin, Storm Shadow, and later on, even Chief Patriarch Agar. As such, time flowed and morning arrived. It was morning, and another day was about to begin. The Blood Dagger clan was already beginning to learn how to use the dagger skills with the elite goblins of the Green Goblin clan, as previously mentioned with Green Goblin. Thanks to this, I could sense that the tribe was becoming a bit more cheerful. Frankly, the tribe was lively. Our clan members were screaming in a way different from the humans and their education. They were screaming, but they didn't say much else. They knew as well. Currently, we were among the lowest of the food chain, and that we had to learn to become stronger. The training sessions were frankly not suitable to labeled by the word training. They just fought and kept on fighting. They just fought under the Chief Patriarch's flag. Archers and magicians like Maven and Giannian were still trying to learn to some extent from the shamans and archers of the Green Goblin clan, but for those who chose the assassin's path had no choice. They fought, and absorbed skills and techniques in learning. That's all. Even the archers and Young-Hian participated in the fights after their lectures. I was also facing Green Goblin likewise. Duke. How long it's been since our tribe has been this lively, I'm not so sure myself. All of your clan subordinates are truly impressive warriors. I am grateful for your thoughts. There were no need for words. Just what was the possibility of being taught by the Queen of the North or Saint Sword in my human days? To be able to be tutored by this Green Goblin was in short, a lifetime opportunity. I slowly armed myself as I stared at the guy. Then please take care of me. Grike. Of course. The guy who was looking towards me was playfully spinning his dagger in the air. He was definitely not even 1/3 of my height, but the pressure was immense. He nodded, and sprinted towards me, as if it was like lightning. Left, right, back to the left, up. Then, his figure disappeared from my sight. In that instant, I felt myself being slammed into the ground. I had no clue where the attack came from at all. What was certain was that I felt a hard blow to my legs. Slightly looking up, I saw Green Goblin smiling as he tapped his dagger on my neck. Duck. This monstrous custard. You are quite an impressive warrior. I can't help but think that you were stronger than me when you first entered this place. I have heard a lot about you from my brothers, but you are truly talented. Grike. I have lost miserably. I am not sure what is so impressive. Usually, the brothers that recently enter this continent can't even see me. Even a few of the chiefs. You might not be so sure, Blood Dagger, but your eyes were definitely following my movements. If he was a human, I would have thought that he was just comforting me, but his expression showed that he wasn't lying. But, even so, I couldn't help but be mad at myself. With my burning eyes, I stared at him and spoke once more. Please take care of me once more. Grike. Then this time, I will lower my speed a bit. Those words were welcoming music to hear. To be honest, there would be no reason to invite him as my tutor, if all I did was continually end up slammed or smashed into the ground. But, the fight this time was the still same. I could only follow him with my eyes, but there was nearly nothing else I could do. What was comforting was at least, I was able to swing my dagger and long sword. I was not able to use the grey sword, as its long reach accompanied many openings. But, Green Goblin's skill was truly overwhelming. I couldn't help but admit that the high proficiency use of the dagger for the Green Goblin clan weren't just nonsense. Aside from the differences in physical specs, I could definitely feel the difference in battle proficiency. To be honest, it was to a state of embarrassment, as I was only sidedly beaten, but despite that, I could feel that the sparring were of immense help. The other clan members were also in vexing moods, but it didn't look as bad. The next day was the same. The next day after was also the same. The third day. After a week passed, it was still the same. All of the Blood Dagger clan members ended up rolling on the dirt ground in some form or shape. But, despite that, there was no one ridiculing us. As time passed, the eyes of the elite partnered trainers showed strong admiration more so than us, and now did not face us with playful expressions. They began to treat us as genuine warriors, despite our dreadfully weak selves. At this time, swinging the sword that night wasn't just a personal routine anymore, but for everyone in the Blood Dagger clan. Even Young Hyun, who thought I was mating with the beauties of the other tribe, came looking for me, but instead found an orc swinging his sword. As such, 1 month passed. It was only possible, since he had lowered his speed in my consideration. It was certainly a coincidence, but I was able to receive the Green Goblin chief's dagger. Clang. The sound of the dagger that I was holding and the knob of the dagger that the Green Goblin wielded rang. His face stared at me in that moment. It definitely held a surprised expression, but I was more alarmed than he was. So much so that my mouth and eyes widened. Gryuk. It was only a single step forward, but it felt good. Drike. Impressive. I quickly replied to that face of much playfulness which had slightly hardened. It was a coincidence. No, it was because of your care that I was. Even so, there's no denying that you blocked my attack. Blood Dagger. I am definitely not neglecting you, but if the other chiefs were to see this scene, they would ridicule me. As someone who has been in this continent for 8 years, to have my attack blocked by a chief that hasn't even surpassed a year. It seems that I have been lazy. In the meantime, I have realized a lot from watching your young clan. Drake. You are incredible. You aren't strong yet, but you are brave and diligent, not knowing what giving up is. It has taken an extremely long time to finally meet a green skin like you. Even if those are empty words, I am grateful. Brave Green Goblin. As such, 3 more days had passed. Afterwards, we began to head out to a dungeon. In fact, the dungeon was more closer to just monsters living in a cave than a dungeon protected by a dungeon master like a Lick, but the efficiency was extremely good. It was due to the monsters there being born very quickly. Of course, since the Green Goblin clan were carrying out the mission of protecting our clan, so there were also a lot of elite Green Goblins that accompanied us. But, when we fought, unless really strong opponents appeared, they did not intervene in our battles. On the contrary, it was certainty that they would not care too much if we were to die to any of those that went to the strong variety, since it was their way of protecting our honor. The Spider Graveyard, known as a popular place among humans for gaining experience and to test changed classes against spiders similar to the size of my Wolfibar, this is mainly due to their limited attack patterns. My objective was obvious: human hunting, and maybe I could discover Quasulgi along the way. My desire for battle was satisfied, but my desire in seeing blood couldn't be fully fulfilled. It may not seem appropriate using this expression, but we were going to do park player killing. Of course, it didn't mean that we would be backstabbing them, investigating the humans that were heading to the dungeon. Kill them all. The location of the cave wasn't too far away from the Western Forest, as I knew this place well, for I had visited it numerous times in the past. Of course, despite the fact that I came in and out of this cave numerous times, for a long time there were no signs of growth. Though I did enter the cave half giving up, but it didn't mean that my memories of it had disappeared. Did you find any traces? Yes, they're all humans. I am not sure. But Captain, how do you know of such a place? I had thoroughly investigated it. Soon, traces of humans began to be discovered nearby. For them to be so careless with their presence, this party is probably a beginner group. It hasn't been long since they entered this place. Meave had asked this question while we were furtively advancing a bit further into the forest. By roughly answering this, the clan members began to look at me with admiration. At this time, I felt curious what Young Hyun was thinking of, but it was fine. It was because Young Hyun, including all the others, were filled with malice. It wasn't unreasonable for them to make those kinds of faces. It wasn't just me feeling that I had gotten stronger. They were of the same. They wanted to test just how much stronger they have become after sparring against the elites of the Green Goblin clan without rest. Especially Young Hyun, who was now completely numb to the killing of humans. So it wasn't irrational for her to make that expression as well. I was somewhat taken aback at how she just wanted blood, honestly, compared to the other clan members that just wanted to see blood fly, but as long as she showed her effectivity in battle, it wouldn't matter. With her numb to the heat of battle, she was growing stronger. We started to advance slowly. The Spider Graveyard was a large cave, wide enough to be called a dungeon. There was definitely a checkpoint that existed for resting, and a checkpoint reserved for making parties as well. Usually, the place where they gathered was at the dungeon entrance. While slowly approaching, I could start to see people quitting their parties or be expelled. Parties that were nearly done preparing to enter the dungeon. If not that, there were others selling potions. Swaying light illuminated the faces of the humans. The fact that they had spare time to enjoy a bonfire was quite funny and ridiculous. I hid myself from afar and began to gradually confirm the faces. There were no named, or quasi-eulogy among them. The spider graveyard was most active in that night, so these guys definitely did not want to lose out on this opportunity. I couldn't rule out the probability that there may be some people that had already entered. I focused my magic into my ears to enhance hearing their voices. We have a useful warrior. I'm a priest. You can take me for 50 of the loot. Selling points. Selling potions. Their numbers roughly had a bit more than us. But I had no sense of feeling that we would lose it all. If we were to wait longer, the alarm magic set by the magicians and archers might activate. I slowly headed towards them as if I was a human. I walked out. I didn't shout the phrase. I simply let out a careel as I walked towards the entrance with my reddened eyes. It would be strange for them to see an orc with a long sword hung on his back while holding a large grey sword accompanied by a dagger on his waist. As for the armor, only one shoulder was covered from when I had changed classes into a gladiator. I had the appearance similar to a cheap weapon merchant rather than a warrior. As expected, the surroundings soon became rowdy. I could hear their chatter clearly. It's an orc. How come? Their confused voices mingled into the background. But what they were most likely thinking would probably be, it's only one monster. It's not dangerous at all. I definitely knew. If I were in their place, I would be thinking the same as well. With their numbers, there was no danger in attaining victory. The only dangerous monsters in this western forest would happen to be the goblins of the Green Goblin clan. Our luck is good. Secretly, a few began to approach me. But the Blood Dagger clansmen hidden in the dark from afar did not react. In the end, two overconfident warriors began to rush towards me. Not bad. But they couldn't compare to me. In an instant, I swung out my grey sword. As if my mana was burning within, I could feel my whole body become stronger. With the slicing of the wind, his body was cut in half. Quark. Those sounds assailed my ear. The sound of human flesh and bones torn apart in an instant. This feeling was different from my first victim from this grey sword. At that time, I definitely wasn't able to cut the beast in half. But now, I was able to feel it clearly. When I saw the body of a human falling in two pieces without screaming, while their upper body and lower body separated. I have become strong. The second guy was the same. To be honest, I had swung in order to cut both of them at once, but as if he had foreboded a bad feeling, he jumped into the air to barely save his life. Leaping towards the guy that had lost his balance, I swung my sword vertically, cutting him exactly in half. That instant burst of blood and pieces of brains covering my body was refreshing. Naturally, a loud roar sprung out of me. Kriuk. Qua. The faces of the humans began to change. The first surprised faces, which later ridiculed this solitary monster, were now shocked. With those shocked expressions, voices continued to shout out. No. Named monster. I'm not sure who it was, but it was a grateful remark. As the chief of the clan, if I wasn't someone of that level, then it would be shameful to my clansmen. Sure. Surround it. Named monster. Duck. SP. Spells. Quickly inform those inside. Do. Duck. I've never heard of such a monster. It was an impressive reaction for them not to run away in all directions. If they had done so, it would have been very bothersome, since it would lead to new reinforcements dispatched from the city. Their formation was completed in a moment, and the guys charged towards my side. I looked on at them in laughter as I raised my fangs. Let's go. A small voice out in the darkness. But there was no mistaking that they heard it. As expected, here and there, voices began to shout and holler out. The humans couldn't understand, but it was the language that we understood. The language of the greenskins. The language of the greenskins that regarded victory and honor as significant. Then, the phrase that our clan members always shouted soon rained down onto my ears like music. Victory! For victory only. Victory. For victory only. For Blood Dagger. Thus commenced a long night. The very first sounds that flew past my ears were arrows fired by Meave and the green-skin archers. The arrows that flew instantaneously punctured the bodies of the humans like pin cushions. The arrow that pierced the shield lacking magical runes and punched through the human's body was clearly from Meave. After completing the change of classes to a fairy sprite archer, the capacity of magic in her arrows increased, so every arrow she fired, a sacrifice would appear. Do. Duck. I never heard of such a monster clan. Duck. Magician. Magician. He was impatiently searching for the magicians, but they were already busy trying to block the arrows fired at them. I happened to smile at the words of the warrior that they have not heard of such a monster clan. A flashy debut. For Blood Dagger. For Blood Dagger. The flag bearer that was running with the flag raised high on his back was the first of the most loyal 5 siblings. His frame was extremely large for a simple flag bearer though. With the body of an orc, he sliced his sword into the necks of his opponents. Using 2 short swords, he was uncommonly using the reverse grip. It was probably from my sacred battle against the Queen of the North that had influenced him. It seems his ambition was to be an assassin. That would be a huge detriment to the clan as a whole. I wanted to recommend the swordsman class that would outscale the same class of the assassin later on. Since he's someone that listens to me well, he would immediately change classes to a swordsman from my instructions. Though he lacks it now, once he awakens his unique ability, I thought that he would look completely different from his present state. Entangle. This group, that had a high ratio of assassins, the reason why we were able to attain victory straightforwardly was due to the presence of plant magician Younghyun. Especially, in this forest, her effectiveness was greatly enhanced. In an instant, tree roots grabbed a hold of the fleeing humans, allowing our clan assassins to rush them. Fast. Seeing her, I had determined that Younghyun was quite crucial to this clan. Thanks to her neutralization magic, cleaning out the rest of the humans became extremely fast. Though there were a few that started to put up resistance, even that minority was quickly defeated. I swung my grey sword widely once against them. Klajik. The 2 humans that broke down made a grim statement. Inform the city. The city. There's a new monster clan. A new monster clan at Jerryuk. I threw a dagger at the noisy humans, causing them to collapse, clutching their necks. Aside from that, I could continuously hear the wailing of pain and loss. The somewhat strong humans, as if they had either entered the cave already or died, otherwise weren't to be seen. Even after the guy had been pierced with the dagger, whimpered protests here and there continued to echo. Oh, save. Save me. Kyarik. I could see a guy whose body was constricted by a tree root, causing his intestines to burst out of his mouth. It was so putrid that it even made me, who was fairly strong to those kind of horrific scenes, grimace. Looking over at Younghyun, I saw that she was laughing. Those intestines lay arranged in a pile splattered in front of the victim. It was a ridiculously easy battle. It wasn't just me. You couldn't say that these guys were strong, but I was able to realize through this fight that we had gotten much stronger from the time after the tutorial. For Blood Dagger. I left the Blood Dagger clansmen intoxicated in the victory alone. It doesn't matter even if they jumped around. Since we had entered this road so quickly after investigating the surroundings, they were unable to escape as most of the humans were lying on the ground, while the rest had already entered the cave. Probably the humans who had fled inside were informing the parties that a new monster clan existed, but it does not matter at this level. I waved at the green-skinned clansmen still drunk in their victory, and as expected, they began to follow me in like dogs. As such, we stepped into the spider cave. A familiar scene welcomed me. The spider webs that were stuck on the walls and also stretched along the ground everywhere. Accompanied by those disgusting spider body fluids, it was an entrance larger than I thought. But the road ahead in which we had to enter was extremely narrow. It seems that the humans do not have to worry about running away. We slowly began to advance. If it were in the case of humans, light magic was needed so that they could see. However, for us, our eyes naturally adjusted to the dark setting. Of course it wasn't perfect, but it was decent enough for us to see and be aware of any potential dangers. So we began to move slowly with me at the front. Finding the humans here were extremely easy. We just had to move towards the light. Not long afterwards, we began to discover a party. Seeing them unperturbed while walking towards the entrance, it seems that the survivors weren't able to inform this party. If they were to have screamed while entering the cave, the summoned would definitely be made aware of the attack, but this act would also in turn call and gather all of the monsters in the dungeon as well. It was an obvious choice, but the summoned that entered the cave prioritized their own lives over the lives of the rest. Probably the ones that have fled in here were looking for parties that made hunting out of a living and prepared to face us. I was beginning to anticipate the battle that will soon transpire. I quietly signaled the 3 goblin siblings of the Loyal 5. I judged that if it were them, they could do it. One was holding a shield, another a long sword, and the last a hammer. I couldn't help but think that they were like assassins from their very cautious movements. It seems that stealth were a special characteristic of the goblin race. Or they could have purposefully obtained and learned that technique. Soon, the 3 goblin siblings confronted those guys. The goblin with the shield was the first to jump in. These agile goblins soon arrived right in front of the guys. The goblins who weren't even half their height suddenly appearing in their sight greatly surprised them. In the end, the goblin who was holding the shield bashed down the magician with her shield, which quickly followed up with a hammer blow crushing down. Duke. The goblin, unable to hold in her joy, let out a sound. Klajik. Following the sound of a person who couldn't even scream before dying. Do. Duck. Goblins. Battle. With the magician flattened onto the ground, the light magic that they had sustained suddenly went out, as the cave became dark again, causing screams to screech out. Oof. The 3 female goblins began to encircle the guys with the perception of them as prey, and the warriors were not able to protect the other party members as they fended for themselves. While after the disappearance of the light magic, the party members were desperately trying to put magic into their eyes, but the tide had already tilted. It was the same behind me. If you consider the previous battle as an act of building experience, then it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this an assimilation of assassination training. The other goblins that had chosen the path of assassins gathered into groups of 5 as expected and began hunting the human parties that were fighting the large spiders by surprise, as screams began to quickly echo throughout the cave. To be quite honest, to say they were screams were lacking, since all of the goblin and hobgoblin assassins were piercing their throats like how they were taught. Grike. Grike. It was a great, successful hunt. As silent, elated voices filled the place as we discovered a large cluster of light. There weren't just one or two parties here. I decided to monitor the situation from afar first. So what I'm saying is that there's a named monster holding a grey sword. So how are we supposed to believe this? In this vicinity, there is only the Green Goblin clan. That's it. For you to suddenly say that a new clan and a named monster appeared, it's more believable for you to rather say that Green Goblin had arrived. You custard. Are you a murderer perchance? Duck, who are you calling a murderer? Can't you see this blood on my clothes? There's the possibility of it being the victim's blood. Stupid fool. Reveal your sins. Duck, I don't know. Duck, I don't know even if we all die. The issue of suspected murderers was the same now or then in the dungeon. The saying to not trust anyone other than your own party members in the dungeon worked quite well for our side. Even the past me wouldn't have believed this custard, who suddenly appeared drenched in blood, saying such nonsense that a named monster had appeared, so this kind of response was natural. By the way, the range of this light was very large. With this much, it was highly probable that this was a place where small clans, or beginners that joined large guilds were trained at. Thankfully, there were no strong opponents that were able to notice our presence from afar. Let's go. With one wave of the hand, the goblins nodded and surged towards the guys with the curry uke. Duck, I was right. They're here. You ducking custards. We're all going to die, Duck. We're all going to die, I tell you. Son of a. Prepare for battle. Prepare for battle. Even though he raised his grey sword, our side was extremely quick. Our arrows fired first before his response to prepare for battle was bellowed as they pierced into the faces of the magicians. An attack that couldn't be prepared for. It was definitely pleasing. Uke. But despite that, the light magic didn't turn off. Naturally, I turned my attention towards the side where the light magic hadn't gone off. I never imagined that I would have met one of my targets for my goal, magic swordsman Kim Dong-nyan, who was able to use magic and the sword coincidentally from his unique ability. Before I knew it, I flung my body towards him. Thanks to that, the enemy archer's arrows flew towards me, but the hobgoblins deflected them with their daggers. Kya! Even though I was wielding a grey sword while rushing at him, his expression didn't change. Rather, it was an amused expression. I definitely knew that face. The kind of expression that thought that he was one of the chosen ones in this world. A category completely opposite from me in the past. Kya! Although he had awakened his unique ability, but he was still a rookie like us, so one's chances of victory was there. As soon as I swung the large grey sword, a semi-transparent membrane blocked it. Shield. It seems that he could sustain shield while using light magic. But, it seems that his mana wasn't bountiful, as he soon deactivated his shield and took out his sword. I stared at the sword punching towards me directly. It seems that he had invested a lot more into the sword than me. But, I had laid everything down. 10 years of experience. And that large amount of experience who could compare to that? Soon, I let one hand go of my grey sword and deflected his sword with my dagger. Ducking custard. As if I had blocked the Green Goblin's dagger 3 days ago. Then, with my left hand, I brought my long sword out and slashed it towards him. That semi-transparent membrane appeared instantly. It seems that his casting speed was faster, or that he already had it casted before I slashed my sword. Anyhow, I thought that it would be the latter. Bang. Accompanied the sound as the long sword and shield barrier clashed. Kim Dong-nyan's magic soon broke. Seeing that, I had let go of the long sword. Again, his sword stretched out towards me, but the pattern was the same from before. I quickly lowered my body to evade and extended out my shoulder, charging at him. A sword flying towards me. It was precisely aiming for my chest. It grazed by. With my shoulder armor, I deflected Kim Dong-nyan's attack. That displeasing, scratching sound onto the steel armor echoed as his body and I collided. That heavy feeling. Cuck. That voice spluttered in my ear. Just like that, I bent my back down and swung my grey sword down, cutting him in half. Certainly a good taste. I could feel the sensation of him splitting from head to toe. Uke. I stood there dumbfounded and stared at my hands. I won. It was a battle I couldn't believe despite accomplishing it with my own hands. I started to feel the shock beginning to subside. And then, I heard the voice of the one that the greenskins called God of Battlefield.